Thank you, Ivy, and thank you, Deborah, for all the work. United Way Next has been fantastic to work with, and they do a tremendous job of bringing us together. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sherry Sanchez Tibbetts. I'm Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Greater Twin Cities United Way. In my role, I do a couple of things. I develop organizational strategy that helps us embed equity in our operations, in our advancement, and in our governance. I oversee 6 employee resource groups that we have internally. I help advance partnerships across tribal, community, and corporate spaces. And right now, some of my work is focused on partnering with our advancement team to develop donor diversification strategies and leading an organizational DEI risk assessment. I'll just mention that before United Way, I was also a board member for a smaller United Way in Greater Minnesota. And I see Deborah clapping, but my time as a board member really helped me understand and appreciate the environment that United Way works in. I was sharing with Deborah and Ivy that I still have my Live United t-shirt, and Live United was something that really brought me to Greater Twin Cities United Way. I think it really sums up how we act as a convener, bringing different parts of our community together to address the physical, social, mental, emotional, and spiritual needs of a person, their family, and our communities. So thank you for being here. And I'm going to turn things over to Todd so that he can introduce himself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Todd Western. I'm a Senior Donor Advisor here at United Way, celebrating my 5th year at United Way. I came actually from the corporate world, and then I transitioned to philanthropy, which I always tell people it's a much nicer version of sales when I first got in, because I came from corporate sales, and I guess, wow, these people are kind of nice. You don't have to really hound people for this, but I brought a lot of my corporate diligence and some of my structure to philanthropy. That's really helped me out a lot, but then brought my passion side and my compassion side to United Way. It's been a great marriage there. And so I have managed donors from the $5,000 to the $100,000 range. And I also lead our leadership council, which is part of our donor diversification program. And I also lead a lot of our community engagement things, impromptu, which we'll talk about later. But I'm a big believer that we have to get out from behind these desks and engage the community and let people know about United Way.
Great. Thank you, Todd. So I'm going to jump in and just sort of framing this, that today is not necessarily a fundraising per se. It's really about how to partner with your DEI team. And you notice that I've used the phrase DEI twice. At Greater Twin Cities United Way, we have not changed our titles. We haven't changed our commitment to our community, and we continue to use the language around diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, I know some United Ways have changed. They might have changed their titles or changed their websites, and that's okay. But as we're talking, I want you to think about your staffing structure and the folks who do your DEI work. So today we're going to spend some time looking at the current landscape around us. How today's unpredictable environment is really reshaping donor behavior and DEI work. Then I'll briefly share a practical approach, a simple, memorable way to keep donor diversification moving forward in uncertain times. And then finally, we'll move from theory to practice. Todd and I will talk a little bit about some real examples of on-the-ground DEI advancement partnerships. Ivy mentioned there'll be time for questions at the end, but let's think of this as a conversation. Feel free to jump in with questions along the way. Okay, next slide, please. So I take a big sigh. When we talk about diversification, we have to look at the current landscape around us. And we know over the past few months, there's been increased social division, some economic signals are mixed, and DEI is facing increasing legal and legislative challenges, not to mention political and social pushback. We're not going to get into that. In fact, you can go to the next slide, Ivy. We're not going to get into that. If you want to stay in, a good resource is the National Council of Nonprofits. They're probably the best folks who are keeping track of all the executive orders, legal challenges, and new rulings that are coming out. But we know that for some organizations, these actions have led to program cuts, rebranding, like we mentioned, or title changes, and websites being scrubbed and retreating from explicit DEI comments. Now, given all that and given the landscape around us, it would be really easy to think maybe now's not the time to focus on diversifying our donor base. Maybe we should just stick to who we already have, and who we've been focused on. But I'm going to give you an insight. That's kind of a paradox, because even as the rhetoric has intensified around the need for, has intensified around DEI and the pushback around DEI, there really is a strong case for DEI-aligned donor diversification. In fact, it's really more urgent now than it was before. Before we talk about why things are so urgent, let's take a poll. Ivy, can you go to the next slide and launch the poll, please? So in the session that you registered for, we use the word VUCA. We're also going to talk about BANI. So I'm just kind of curious, how familiar are you with the terms VUCA or BANI? You've never heard of them, you've heard of one, but you're not really sure what they mean. You're somewhat familiar, very familiar.
It looks like 10 out of 11 people have answered the question so far.
Okay.
And I want to say 50% said never heard of them. I was also one of those people. I actually didn't know the term until I was taking care of the promotion for this presentation. 40% said heard of them, but not sure what they mean. And then it looks like one person said very familiar.
Great. So let's go to the next slide and get into VUCA and BANI. And we're starting at VUCA because it sets the landscape around us. VUCA is a term that was developed by military and corporate strategy circles to describe increasingly unpredictable challenges around us. VUCA means volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Now that's a lot to take on. That was the environment. But now futurists are saying, and if you attended the Together We Thrive conference, you might have heard Angela mention BANI. BANI is the new world that we're living in. VUCA wasn't enough. Now, in fact, our environment is more brittle. Systems look strong, but they can fracture quickly. Think about the impact COVID had and that we're still recovering from that. It's anxious, uncertainty fuels stress and fear, and people are more risk aversion. Sorry, I'm trying to close things off. Non-linear, which means that small triggers create outsized or unpredictable effects. We're not really sure how things happen sometimes. And incomprehensible. We aren't able to explain the way some things happen at all. So both frameworks talk about complexity, but both talk about complexity, but BANI is really more human-centered. It's talking about the systems and feelings that contribute to the world around us. So now that we know what BANI stands for, let's unpack a little bit about what the terms mean. When we say something that is brittle and it looks strong until it breaks, in fundraising, brittleness can mean over-reliance on a narrow donor segment or a relationship that appeared solid but could fracture overnight. A good example, a local ACLU board member recently remarked that they've seen a dramatic increase in both volunteers and donations post-election. Meanwhile, one of our long-term corporate partners decided to postpone a project that was 2 years in the making because they didn't feel like now was the time to roll out an education initiative focused on cultural humility, collaboration, or active listening. When we look at anxiety, it really affects the way people make decisions. Today, triggers are heightened by fear and stress and not just confusion. In an anxious climate, some donors may believe in our mission, but they may hesitate to contribute. They're worried about the economy, about public perception, and for some of our corporate partners, even possible legal risk if we're not clear in our messaging and in the work that we're doing. And then you factor on that sometimes newer, younger, or diverse donors are also wondering if their values are going to be really reflected by the organization. There was a survey recently in a 2023 Charitable Giving in America survey found that that many Gen Z and BIPOC donors are less trusting of nonprofits. They actually prefer a direct connection to a cause and look for ways to be more hands-on. When we look at non-linear in a world, sometimes our outcomes don't match our efforts. For example, you can spend months planning a gala and see disappointing results, while a single authentic conversation at a community event or a partnership with an employee resource group or an ERG can lead to a long-term sustainable relationship. And finally, sometimes things just don't make sense. Campaigns that should work flop, and giving patterns don't follow their trends. The incomprehensibility means that we need to lead with humility, with curiosity, and rapid adaptation. Ivy, I'm going to ask if you can launch another slide, because I'm curious as to which of the factors you're feeling most in your work right now.
You guys are answering this one in rapid speed. It looks like 90% have answered the question. 20% said brittleness of loyalty. 30% said anxiety about donor engagement. 40% said nonlinear or unpredictable patterns. And 10% said incomprehensible shifts in donor behavior.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody want to comment about what they're feeling or raise questions around BANI or VUCA? Okay, let's go to the next slide. So I started talking about BANI and VUCA because I think of this as a time where there's so much going on right now, and nonprofits are challenged to stay current with existing executive orders, with donor trends, or just community perception, that we're not looking at sort of what we can do next. We're just sort of reacting. And BANI really helps explain that. I think of BANI and DEI as a Venn diagram, maybe not quite a Venn diagram, but they're definitely in the same ballpark. BANI tells us about the environment is unstable, while DEI will give us the tools to be resilient as we move forward. And as we move forward, Ivy, you can go to the next slide. Sorry. Thank you. And as we move forward, I want to share a simple framework. It's called the 4 A's that helps us really look at how we can foster donor diversification during uncertain times. Now, the 4 A's are approach, awareness, alignment, access, and adaptability. When we look at each BANI element, like brittle, for example, we know that it's fragile and there's an over-reliance on a narrow donor base. The challenge is that sometimes we could lose stability when we're talking about a specific segment. Now, the response to that is awareness, to track demographic trends and identify opportunities for engaging underrepresented donors. And DEI can help build organizational flexibility to support diverse leadership and systems that ensure equitable responses, and making sure that we're flexible and we're accommodating different points of views. When we look at anxious, we know that we're heightened by fear and hesitation, and that even donors will delay giving gifts or avoiding engagement due to risk perception. So to counter that, we look at alignment. opportunities to connect our giving to causes that are meaningful to people, to building trust, and really lowering those emotional and reputational barriers that some donors may experience. When we think about the nonlinear or the unpredictable cause and effect, we look at access, how to remove those barriers so that we have more small authentic interactions and scale to impact. Think about consistent action and attending cultural events. And then finally, when we look at the incomprehensible, there is no clear why. So we need to focus on adaptability, to be adjusting our language, our channels, and the ways that we communicate with authentic engagement. Think about this as listening, having community listening sessions, and being able to align your work with community values in a way that resonates with that segment and on the channel or platform that they're going to use the most. Not everybody's on LinkedIn, not everybody uses WhatsApp, not everybody follows traditional media sources. So it's really about that flexibility and knowing your audience. And I'm going to say, just because when the data doesn't tell us why something's happened or where we're going, sometimes it's that connection that we've made with donors that will keep them with us through uncertain times. And we have to embed DEI principles at each of those stages. Next slide, please. Okay, one more question. Which of those 4 actions do you think would make the biggest impact for you right now?
Looks like we're just waiting on a couple more responses. But at the moment, alignment, it looks like it's in the lead. 50% said alignment, 30% said adaptability, and 20% said access. It doesn't look like awareness is really on anyone's radar.
Well, that's good because we know what's around us. Let's go to the next slide, Ivy. And you can just go to the next one after that. So I know some of y'all are thinking, Sherry, we're keeping up with legal and legislative challenges, political and social pushback around DEI, all the events that make this a BANI time, and we have fundraising goals. Maybe donor diversification sounds nice, but we don't have the time for it. I'm going to challenge y'all to think about donor diversification in a different way. It's not just nice to have, because it assumes that we have a stable donor base if it's just nice to have. But we've learned that there's shifting environmental changes, and it's really become something that we need to focus on now. And second, I can guarantee you, 100% guarantee you that your DEI team or the folks who are in charge of your DEI work are well aware of the pushback and the anxiety. They may not be using the BANI terms, but they're navigating through the complexity right now in that framework. So at United Way, we've taken on a couple of areas that really sort of start mending the two between DEI, BANI, and then layering on advancement. One of the things that we're engaged in right now is an organizational risk assessment. Now, we're working with outside counsel to look at how equity shows up in our operations, our communications, our grant making, HR, and advancement strategies. The framework considers not only our work, but recognizes our organizational values and the impact that we have on community. Now, it's really important that you find a firm that gets that isn't trying to limit your work, but really wants to be a partner as you move forward. And we're using this assessment, our legal assessment, as sort of the foundation as we consider other risks that could come into play around reputation, culture, funding. And it gives us the space where we can identify maybe there's opportunities for us to be bolder in our work and where we might want to adjust. how, and most importantly, it teaches us, it will show us how to navigate without backing away from our commitment to center equity in our work or to ensure that our workforce reflects the communities that we serve. The next area that we're focused on right now is building partnerships with member-driven organizations. So we have an active partnership right now with Hispanics in Philanthropy to hold a listening session. And then we're a member of the Minnesota Black Chamber of Commerce. Organizations like HIP or the Chamber provide opportunity, or have open membership, but they also provide opportunity for your United Way to get aligned with community, to attend events and have a trusted partner, and really to understand what some of the priorities are. And then finally, I talked about our ERGs earlier, and that my job is focused on our employee resource groups. We have 6 ERGs, which are starting to mature. And just as a side note, our ERGs are open to all employees. They have a clearly defined process for forming or for ending, job descriptions for their co-chairs, and a small budget. We've spent time really building a solid base. Oh, our ERGs also are compensated and attend quarterly meetings with our executive team. Not only do our ERGs support our employees, but they serve as a connector to our corporate partners, adding another touch point. Next year, we're really stepping into that role as a convener, and we'll be hosting our first ERG Summit, bringing together ERG leadership from both corporate and state partners. The summit will provide an education opportunity with a guest speaker for our partners who might see some of their ERG budgets cut right now, as well as networking and building presence and alignment with our work and community values. The ERGs can be a good way to engage younger and diverse donors. And if you don't have an employee resource group, think about stepping in as that convener anyway. And instead of a summit, have a speaker series that targets ERGs. There's really opportunity for connection. Okay, next slide, please. So I'm going to turn things over to Todd, who's going to talk about our Leadership Council, which is really one of our robust initiatives moving forward.
All right. With the Leadership Council, when I was put in charge of it, my approach has been very practical, meaning, as I mentioned before, the goal is to diversify our donor base. And we want to diversify our donor base through younger people, whether they're Black, white, whatever. We want younger people because in our particular case, our high donors are aging, and you have to have a pipeline, right? So you have to have prospects, and you're 1 to many, and then you're 1 to 5,000, you're 5,000 to 100,000. But if $100,000 and more is aging out, and there's nothing to replace them, then you can't survive on that. So my goal was, how do we create, again, coming from my corporate side, how do we create the buckets that it just moves along? People that are in a prospect to the 1 to many, to the 5,000, 10,000, 10,000 above. So that's just how I looked at it. So in order to diversify your donor base, you have to get out in the community. And like I mentioned before, in addition, this is a good complement to what the things that Sherry was talking about. The Leadership Council, what we do is we engage those individuals that are, for lack of a better word, the millennials, right? They're up and coming, they're emerging leaders. They're about 30, 35. They got their first promotion. They're married now, prior to have a kid, and you want to grow with them. You want to bring them along, because some of our biggest donors are donors that started as volunteers. And if you don't engage individuals where they're at before you need them, you're not going to win them. So, for example, the Leadership Council, we meet 4 times a year, quarterly, and what we do is we empower them. And before we did that, what we did was we went out and did a speaking or an engagement tour. And so it was 3 of us, and we went out into our own particular networks, and we asked them, like friends, family, coworkers, or not coworkers, but other people, and we say, who do you give to? Why do you give to them? Why do you or do you not give to United Way? And if you don't get to United Way, why don't you? And we took all that information and we brought it back. And the number one thing was, they said, we just don't see you. We don't see you. Then when you talk to my know-it-all son, who's 35, right? He says, Dad, there's no way I'm giving to United Way. Like, you guys are 102 years old and blah, blah, blah. I just don't know you guys. Like, you're an old organization. So instead of me punishing him and grounding him for saying something about my company, I said, I took that, but he's telling you information that will tell you what they know. And you take that information and you use it. So I really use my son to say, okay, how do I leverage, because he is the people that we're trying to reach. So if he thinks that, then the rest of the millennials are thinking that, and the rest of the young people are thinking that, right? And so what happened was I made him explain it, like, and he went through all these different examples, and I used honesty, and I looked at United Way, and I said, okay, is some of that true? Is all that true? And I found some, okay, we can improve here. So that's when we kind of redesigned the leadership council, using the input from what the community said, and say, this is how they want to see us. And so that what I did was I created a summer engagement plan. So I found out all the summer engagement opportunities within the community, whether it be the Jazz Fest, whether it be the Black Chamber of Commerce Golf Tournament, and I put it on a schedule. And I said, here's all the events in June, July, August, April, May. And I said, and I put it up to the team and to the organization, said, here's opportunities for us to get in the community and just meet somebody. We're not selling anything. We may or may not put up a tent, but we're just there. We're showing up to say we're here. And that was one thing. The other thing is the mindset change of United Way you cannot acquire donors through literature. You can't acquire them through TV. You have to acquire by showing up. And so every day that all of us go out, whatever committee we are, even if we're not a committee, we represent United Way, right? And so people are always watching. So when you're out in the community, you're representing United Way. And so again, it's everybody's responsibility. And the other thing too, so when we did it, when we brought them in, we introduced them, the low-hanging fruit was we introduced them to like the free will. So every 30, 35-year-old wants to do a will, but it's very expensive. But we have the free will opportunity. So we said, guess what, guys? As part of being a part of United Way, here's a free will opportunity. It's free. Here's the application. We'll help you do it. What young person, millennial, would not want to do that? And guess what he associates that with? He associates that with United Way. And how much did that cost us? Zero, right? And so you create and like Sherry said earlier, you create a direct connection and let them feel empowered, and making sure that's within the confines of our mission and purpose. The last thing is we've experienced success because when we reimagined Leadership Council a couple of months ago, we held a strategy session of what is your philanthropy goal? And so what would you like to see as this group of young people, what is you guys' mission within sight of our mission? And when you tell them to them that way, now they have power, they have empowerment. They feel like, okay, they're not telling us, they're letting us tell them within the confines of the purpose and the mission of United Way, what we want to do. A lot of times what I tell my donors is, my only job is to bring you closer to the work that most interests you. Bring you closer to so I'm your tour guide on your philanthropy journey. Everybody's on a journey and everybody wants to give, but they don't know how, when, or where. So I'm your tour guide to help you, bring you close to the work that you are. And if we have that, I found it successful that if we have that mentality, it speaks to that potential donor better than, like in the old corporate sales day, you go into an office and you would just, vomit all your product information and why you're better than this person, but you talk to them. What would you like to see? And so we've experienced a lot of good luck with that. And then from there, now you can partner with other ERG groups. Let's say, for example, let's say 3M. They have like 9 ERG groups, and you say, and you work with them to say, here's what we have to offer. How can we work with you? Whether you want to work as part of our leadership council, but how can leadership council help you? And the best way to get that pipeline filled that I found is we've had 25 individuals stay in tune with United Way, And the way I've done it is through social engagement and social interaction. And because of that, one of the people in Leadership Council, our Leadership Council is fully funded. We don't ask United Way office for any money because the person within the Leadership Council owns a business. He's a CEO. He lets us have our annual meetings there. He pays for everything. And they want to pay for them because they feel empowered to do it. And so that's just the power that can happen. Hopefully I've answered your question. And if you guys have any other questions, but at the end of the day, oh, last example, I'm sorry. I get excited about it. I'm very passionate about it because it's easy because all you're doing is interacting. You're talking to people. Here's a last example. When I tell you that you never know who's watching and you never know your interaction, literally I was coming in from lunch today. We're coming to the thing. Our building is locked. There's an individual from United Way standing there and an individual that I don't know. The individual I don't know, his name is Avery. And he's talking to one of our colleagues. She's trying to catch the Uber who's right in front of the building. He came there because he wants to volunteer for 988. She couldn't really give him the information because she's trying to catch the Uber. So me and my other colleagues were there. And I said, so how can I help? She said, can you help him? I said, what do you need help with? I'm just trying to volunteer and get volunteer. And then one of my colleagues, well, I think that's volunteer unite. I think it's this. I think it's that. You have to call back. He said, I've called back twice and I got an answer. And I said, wait a minute, here's my card. I will find out the information and you call me back. Now, if you judge a book by its cover, it looked like he had been through some things in life and maybe he survived a 988 experience and now he wants to come back and pay it forward. Wouldn't that be a great story if that's how this turned out? But the point of that story is I represented United Way in the best way possible. People are always watching. So when you're out in the community, everybody's a potential United Way donor. Whether it's small, little, volunteering, everybody's a possibility. It's how you represent yourself, how you show up in the community, because that's what they want to see. And if that turns out to be that way it is, I would love to come back to you and say, guess what? He's a 988 employee now, and he was on the brink of something. He got himself together, and now he wants to come back and help out and pay it forward. So that's the example I'll leave you with, but there's opportunity everywhere.
Thank you, Todd. I'm just going to share one other story from Leadership Council. Todd talked about engaging millennials and folks who maybe are just starting their career. We also connected with the Vikings. You know, we're in Minnesota, and I have to say Skull Vikings. But we had someone reach out from the Vikings because they had new staff starting, brand new, first job out of university. And we got them connected into Leadership Council because their supervisor was trying to build a network for them as they moved to Minnesota. That led to a conversation with the DEI team, and they want to look to being part of our ERG summit. And so Leadership Council isn't just about finding places, it's also about building that network and helping sort of utilizing all the resources that we have available. So thank you for your work, Todd. Ivy, I think we can go to the next slide, which I think is a poll about your donor base and how diverse is it compared to your community?
And that poll should be up, and that is the last poll that we've got.
Yes. I really wanted to ask questions.
And that's okay. I love when there's exercises like polls and waterfalls in the chat and all of those things. And I know that we get a ton of engagement. It looks like about 70% have participated in this question as well. I'll give it a few more seconds to see if anyone else wants to. Looks like we've got 8 out of 10 people. Right now, it looks like 38% said much less diverse. 25% said slightly less diverse, and then it was a tie for last place between about the same, more diverse than the community, and don't know.
Thank you, Ivy.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we're moving on to questions, and I noticed in one of the questions, oh, I'll let you advance the next slide. So we're at questions, and actually you can probably stop sharing the slide. We can just sort of have conversation. I noticed that one of the questions in the chat was looking for best practices around DEI, particularly in our United Way network. A great resource is the United Way Worldwide DEI Network. Each month there are membership calls. Whether you're the DEI person or someone else in your team handles some of those functions, they would be welcome to join. And in September, the DEI team is hosting AMALDA, the Academy for Multicultural Leadership Development and Advancement. It's going to be virtual this year, but there'll be guest speakers, including Angela Williams will be there. And it's a great opportunity to learn more about what's happening, not only in the network, but with some of our partners as well.
And Sherry, if you wouldn't mind providing like a link or anything you have to that, I'd love to send it out to everyone. I know that there is also kind of a hub or a page in United Way online that you can access. They had put out a presentation on some framing of DEI, kind of phrases and the changes that they're making. And I know I've shared that in the past, but I'm more than happy to link to that as well as how to navigate the landscape a little bit. They've also shared some things there. So I'll make sure to include those things in the follow-up email for you guys as well.
I will definitely send information about AMALDA as well as the contact if you want to get on the mailing list for United Way Worldwide DEI or join us in some of the network calls.
Awesome.
Dick, I see you're raising your hand.
No, Sherry, a question for you.
Sure.
Or anyone else. My background is as a CEO. And I always felt that my personal involvement in DEI kinds of activity was essential for the organization to have that as a priority concern. What's the degree of involvement in CEOs in that national group you just mentioned?
So the national group has folks from all sorts of United Ways. We have larger United Ways like Greater Twin Cities and the United Way of Baltimore who are vice presidents. We have folks joining from Atlanta who are senior directors in a different role, but their team doesn't have a DEI person. And then we have some smaller United Ways whose CEOs do join. So it's a wide range of membership, really based upon the United Way that is based upon the United Way. Everyone is welcome to attend not only the network calls, but participate in AMALDA as well.
I guess I'm still coming back to the question, do you have CEOs involved?
So I haven't looked at the membership roster other than knowing that we have smaller United Ways that are represented where it may be an executive director of a United Way. And then we have senior leadership from larger United Ways. But I will check with the folks at Worldwide to see sort of what that range of membership looks like.
Well, I really don't need an answer to the question. I think it's just for the purpose of discussion kind of question. Very often in my experience in working with my local United Way and others, that the CEOs' priorities help lead the organization more than people in other staff positions.
Without a doubt, that's definitely the case. And I can say that sometimes our DEI network calls are really for practitioners, those who are in the midst of DEI talking about maybe an emerging trend or best practices. But our United Way, our CEO is very involved. We're not able to take the stance that we have taken where we're not changing our commitment to equity, we're not rolling back without the support of our CEO and our board.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. I saw someone else had their hand up or.
Hi, it's Jason McCarty. I'm in Jackson, Mississippi. I go by he, they pronouns. It's not really a question. I just wanted to say thank you for having this. I also think it's important that we continue to have these conversations. I know in Jackson, I mean, we're in Mississippi, right? So it's an interesting place to be, but I think a win that we were able to do, and I wanted to share that the local pride organization here in Jackson, they had quite a few large corporate donors that normally participate that did not want to participate this year. However, they were able to donate to us, and then we were able to track the money through. And so they were still able to put on their event as normal and still had that funding, but it didn't come necessarily from that organization. So I think that's a win that we were really proud of. And also, you know, there were some United Ways in Mississippi that took their DEI stance off their websites. And I'm proud that we did not. But yeah, let's continue to have these conversations. I know gay employees at United Way, we matter. And so we definitely need to make sure that we have a voice at every table.
So Jason, thank you for sharing that. You hit 2 points that I wanted to circle back on. One around how some of your corporate partners or corporations in your community stepped away from Pride and other initiatives. That's definitely a strategy that we're looking at, is to be that place for donors to go to when they may not know where else or how else to direct their funding. And then the other thing I was just going to comment is that sometimes raising that awareness helps the cause. You may have heard that a couple of months ago during Pride, Minneapolis Pride Committee had rejected funding and actually gave back funding from one corporation. They put out a public statement and then had more donations come in to support their work than they had before. And it was just around the alignment around DEI. So thank you for sharing. Z? I know I probably butchered that.
No problem at all. It's just like Lloyd or Aaron, it's just Z, but
okay.
it's uncommon, so don't worry about it at all.
Okay.
It happens all the time. My question, to follow up to what Todd was sharing about how he got engagement with the younger folks using the Free Will program, I'm just wondering, is that program only for the US, or is there something like that for us here in Canada?
I saw your note. I don't know. I'm not familiar with it. Maybe that's a question for Ivy or someone else. Todd, perhaps?
I'm not sure. I can probably try to find out, but yeah, I'm not sure. I know it's, it would have to be, right? Like, I would think.
That's kind of what I thought. I had suggested that I don't want to give you pronouns, she or they, ask in the group, because I also don't know. I know that some of our planned giving presenters have presented on the Free Will program and things like that, and we've shared it. And I know that there are obviously United Ways outside of the US, so I feel like, because I think that they have a link that's like / United Way or something like that, that it would be open to everyone. But it is possible that because the wills are involved, like there's laws and things that are state and country specific. I'm not sure, but I know that I will go ahead and include the links and the resources that I've got, and I might even be able to connect you with a couple of those speakers that have spoken on planned giving and the Free Will tools as well. But again, if anyone in this call knows the answer, you don't have to be the presenter. Feel free to chime in.
This is Anne Marie Schoenhoven. I'm reaching out from the United Way of the Dutchess Orange region, and I'm a new staff member here in the New York Hudson Valley. Love the experience so far, although totally overwhelmed with just figuring it all out. But delighted to be in the United Way family. My comment, and I don't know this, we just kicked off our first Make a Will month campaign for our organization. So I will follow up myself to get that answer. But aren't wills like international? They don't generally have borders. I mean, you may have members within your will that are, you know, I have family members in the Czech Republic. And so, I mean, when all is said and done, I think the courts will figure it out and the tax man will be sticking his finger in, you know? So I don't know. I don't know what to say. That's just a comment. I don't know if there are borders for wills.
I'm just going to say, Ivy, it sounds like you have a topic for your next series.
Definitely. That's why I love our Q&As. We always get questions that we're able to follow up on, but also to kind of help educate and maybe ease up some of the overwhelm that is running or working for a United Way or a nonprofit as a whole. I don't know how large your team is, Anne Marie, and welcome to the community. But I know my staff, when I was working with the local United Way, at fully staffed, we had 10. But we were rarely fully staffed. You've got 5. Yeah. I think at one point I was definitely doing 3 different positions with some people that had left and some maternity leaves. But I think that's kind of nonprofit in a nutshell. So I definitely think I will look into the free will stuff and get as many answers as I can. And if anyone is an expert that is watching this replay in the future, we would love to have you present in 2026.
Yeah, great sale point there, Ivy. That's why Ivy's the best at what she does.
Thank you, Deborah. One of the questions I actually had for you guys, I loved listening about the Leadership Council. At my United Way, I was in charge of Volunteer United, which we had rebranded from Emerging Leaders, because we found that a lot of the people that wanted to volunteer with us and to actually do something more than just give dollars, they didn't see themselves as an emerging leader. They didn't see themselves as emerging at all, or they were like retired and just wanted to volunteer and give their time, or they had zero interest in leadership. They were fine being like just an associate or just a campaigner, things like that. And I was able to do something similar where we had actually revamped it, got hundreds of volunteers to volunteer with us. And what we started doing was not only promoting that a ton and creating an actual pipeline from Volunteer United volunteer all the way to like board member and donor and ADT giver, but we were also able to start getting them in with us more as an organization, because our biggest thing was we were giving individuals the opportunity to make a hands-on impact with the nonprofits that their dollars were going to. And we never really gave them the opportunity to actually have a hands-on impact in United Way. So what we started doing was similar to Todd's summer engagement plan. We planned to have a table at a few events locally, and then we actually asked for Volunteer United volunteers to come help and be a part of those along with staff and board members, so that they were actually able to have hands-on opportunities with United Way. And then from there, we had some that wanted to come stuff envelopes, some prep our campaign bags, some become campaigners. We were actually able to kind of get them further into the United Way pipeline, where they weren't just learning about the nonprofits that they were giving to, but they were actually getting involved too. So besides programs like VU and the Leadership Council, I was just wondering, and the Chamber of Commerce, is how else do you recommend finding these diverse donors? And maybe something that the other individuals on this call or watching the replay can start doing at their own organizations.
So I think that's the $1 million question. One, we've started looking at data. We have to be data driven, but we've started to look across the 9 counties that Greater Twin Cities serves to see what our donor base looks like, if there are populations that aren't giving or aren't represented, and then overlaying that with statistical geographic information so that we know that there's a higher percentage perhaps in one area. And I'm going to say really the best way that we've started engaging in diverse communities. Last year we started, we had a dinner around Black philanthropy sponsored by some of our board members who came together to share their experiences, their expectations, and their contact list. And from there, our advancement team took that initiative and they've started to build out other engagement opportunities. And then through our partnership with Hispanics in Philanthropy, we hope to do something similar where we're actually engaging Hispanic and Latin identifying leaders and people who support their work from across the metro to get better aligned with community priorities, so that when we're working with Marcoms, it's not just a generic blanket message, it's really targeted to specific communities. And then we have great hopes for our ERG connections.
And the other thing too, I wanted to mention is you know, I think it's very important to start with the low-hanging fruit, and that complements what Sherry talked about, and that is when you have these groups, ERG groups, the Women United, Emerging Leaders, like this one we had a Planned Gift and Endowment meeting. My thing to all those committee members: does your family know what you do? Do they understand why you do what you do? Because if you can't sell your family, or at least your family can't recite what you do, then this is only Todd Western speaking, then I've not done my job at Work United Way. That's Todd Western speaking. So my point is, like, on a Planned Gift and Endowment, that individual has made a significant investment in United Way upon their death, right? So upon their death, and they've been given all this money, this time, upon their death, and their kids are like, hey, that was their dream. And we've had kids say this: that was their dream. That's not our dream. I'm upset that she gave that much money to you, right? Because she never brought the children, the nieces and nephews along the journey with them, so at least they understand it. So that's what I'm trying to tell you, is like, we got to start there. And then and in addition to what Sherry's talking about, but if the people that are actually involved in United Way are not telling their circle of friends and their network, we're kind of missing the easy boat there. And because remember, donor acquisition can be expensive. So that costs nothing. So these summer engagement programs, you're using internal, external people associated with United Way, costs nothing. And so anyway, I can go on and on for that, but it's yeah, it is what it is.
That's an excellent point, and I want to add to it in just a second. But since it is the top of the hour, I just wanted to let you guys know that if any of you need to hop off for a meeting or anything that you've got to go to, if you still have questions, feel free to add them in the chat. We'll try to answer them in the recording. Otherwise, thank you so much for your time and spending it with us and choosing to be here. If we can help or assist you and your journey with United Way in any way, shape, or form, please let us know. Otherwise, there will be like a 3-question survey at the end of this call when you close out, just to see how we're doing, if we can make any improvements, just to continue running great events for you guys. And we have another DEIB Roundtable in November. But to add to Todd's point, I couldn't agree more. I know with our Volunteer United program, one of the things that I loved seeing was partners volunteering together. And if we were low on a volunteer event or something like that, they'd just be like, oh, I'll just make my husband come, or I'll bring my mom, or something like that, or I'm sure my daughter needs volunteer hours, and they were bringing people and getting them involved. And then the same with the actual act of fundraising. My boyfriend knew all of the work that I was doing for United Way and locally within our nonprofit community. And I remember when his company was offered the Time Around campaign to make whoever it was, they had like one of the programs that's like, you could donate to literally anyone. He convinced his entire department to donate to United Way and to choose United Way simply because I had talked to him about all of the work we're doing and all of the nonprofits that we had. And he said he doesn't even know if anyone in his department has given through the payroll deduction and all of those things in like the 11 years that he's worked there. And he convinced his whole department. So I definitely think sometimes it's just speaking to your circle and telling them what you're doing and what you're passionate about and who you care about.
Yep. Absolutely. Thank you, Ivy, for sharing that. Again, I just want to echo a couple of things that Ivy said. Thank you all so much. I also want to just really thank Sherry and Todd for their great presentation. It was wonderful. And of course, Ivy. Anyway, and then I think, Ivy, we're going to stay on for a couple more minutes in case there's any additional questions. But again, we know that all of you are super busy. So if you've got to jump off, please have a great afternoon. And the date for the next DEIB Roundtable is November 13th.
Thank you all for joining us.
Bye, Dick. Good to see you.
Yes. Did anyone else have any other questions or comments or anything that you guys would like to know? I'm sure between the four of us, we've got lots of answers and experience.
Deborah, I'm so glad that you put this program together, but I think, like all of us, having so few of the 60 registrants is really a shame. I hope that doesn't speak to the forced change in priorities that local United Ways are having to deal with. I tuned in because of my deep interest in the subject and my involvement with it over many years. But not seeing more of our members disturbs me a lot.
Yeah. So, I think, Dick, and again, I'm just a co-chair, a volunteer like you, and come out of, kind of the United Way. We know that evolved, has changed, and is continuing now to have to deal with what's the realities of what's going on. But I will say this, I also think that we forget, especially for those of us that are maybe out of it, but out of the network and out of the, it is fall. So I think a lot of people sign up and then realize that, there's allocations and programs and initiatives going on, and campaign is starting. And I think with best of intentions, people want to attend because they wouldn't have signed up if they didn't want to attend. But then reality kicks in and they're like, oh my God. And then they remember it's going to be recorded so they can watch it later on. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed, but I don't think that we're seeing any, I think we're all pivoting and changing. Even the United Way DEIB committee is going to be making a few changes and a few evolutionary efforts. But I don't think that it changes. It just changes how we're doing things and the approach that we're doing. Again, recognizing the reality of where we are today.
Yeah, that's a good point, Deborah. We're in so many different places geographically, politically, even size-wise, that sometimes it's harder to be at every event. And there's a lot of information coming out right now around DEI and particularly around pushback and what organizations can do. In fact, as I was getting on to this meeting, another one was launching around some of the legal challenges, a current update around the legal environment for DEI. And I registered for that just so I could get the recording.
Yeah, so there's a perfect example.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sherry.
Yeah, we definitely experienced that, I will say, from like the event side of things. Now that people know that we record almost all of our events, that they will register because they are interested, but they do know that they can watch the replay. Me being neurodivergent myself and somebody with an auditory processing disorder, that's part of why I'm so invested in DEI. I know I will register for things like summits and conferences and webinars with the full, wholeheartedly plan to watch the replay because I want to turn it on 2x speed and I want to hear it the way that my brain can stay engaged and focused, because sometimes it doesn't mean a whole lot for me to participate in a live thing if I am just going to be distracted by everything around me and everything else happening. So I'd rather just watch the replay. So I know that that's definitely something that some of our members and our registrants also experience.
Good. I just don't want to see the subject relegated to low priority.
Agree.
Yeah. I will say, at least as a staff member myself, part of the reason that I ended up going to work for United Way Next is because our commitment to the community and through DEIAB. And so I know for me, it is definitely not low priority. It is one of my biggest interests and passions. And at least for now, with me being in charge of events and a big part of our Engage and Exchange work group, I will make sure that they still exist.